If Black English isn't a language, then tell me what is. That's the title of an essay published by James Baldwin in the New York Times in 1979. And in this essay, Baldwin positions one's language, specifically speaking of Black English, as a means of communicating and understanding and describing one's position and circumstances in the world. Language, as he explains here, is how we make sense of our realities and communicate that to others. Professionally, I work as a copy editor, so I spend a lot of time contending with, grappling with, thinking about how to communicate effectively. And mostly my work is in written work, but I think that also is it can be applicable to how we speak, because often for a lot of writers the two are very much like deeply connected. Through my work, I've studied a lot of grammar. I've studied a lot of prescribed grammar rules, and kind of I think a lot about what I find effective, what I find ineffective. But like through all this work, through all the research I've done and like the editing I've done in my career, I have developed a kind of like profound respect for Black English, also known as AAVE, Ebonics, all of that. I very much respect the language that myself and a lot of the people I know, like the Black people I know, the language that we speak. As Baldwin emphasizes in the essay, it is a language, not simply a dialect, not simply a deviation from prescribed standard American English. It is its own entity, its own language. As Baldwin kind of talks about in the essay, the way someone speaks tells you a lot about them, tells you where they're from, what they're interested in, how they would like to position themselves, and it kind of speaks to the culture that they belong to. And the specific example that he gives in the essay is the many ways that French is spoken in different places where French is the common language. So the French of Quebec, Canada is not the same as the French of Martinique, or even the French of Paris, France. If we want to bring it back to Black English, I would say, and I think Baldwin kind of speaks to this, that Black English is a language that is often delegitimized and misunderstood by those who exist outside of it, those who do not understand it. And ironically enough, despite that, our language is often co-opted by those who wish to kind of position themselves as edgy or hip or cool, while at the same time kind of not seeing it as its own legitimate thing. And the specific example that he gives in the essay is the idea of the Beat Generation and how that was co-opted from Black English, from Black culture by these white artists. And I think you can see it very much now with kind of a lot of the things you may see like in K-pop, which is more it's closer to like dressing and musical and stuff like that. But that same kind of co-option is happening, but it's like specific to language. I think we see it a lot on social media with all of this slang and this trends that are kind of understood by the wider public as like TikTok language or like internet slang, when it really is just stuff that like I heard my auntie saying to me like when I was a kid, and it's like that very much that co-option and that delegitimizing of our language is, it was happening then and it's happening now. And I think even as Black people, we can sometimes fall into that trap of kind of believing this lie that our language is not culturally and kind of socially, politically relevant and important, and we may try to distance ourselves from it and lean towards what is widely perceived as more respectable and more elevated. On one hand, I do, as I said, like I think a lot about communicating effectively, and I do think that being intentional about how you communicate and how you speak and how you write, I do think that is very important. But at the same time, I don't think that we should be so preoccupied with trying to do what is correct and what really more so aligns with prescribed standard English grammar. I don't think we should be so preoccupied with that we're distancing ourselves from, the language that feels authentic, that feels true to us, that, speaks to where we're from, who we're raised by, that kind of speaks to our culture. I don't think we should be so preoccupied with being respectable, being respected, and adhering to kind of the white man's standards about language. I don't think we should be so preoccupied with that we kind of distance ourselves, from our culture, from our people, from each other. I think this essay very much grapples kind of with that conflict that a person may face, but it ultimately positions Black English as a language that is culturally important, culturally relevant, smart, and important. Of course, I do think there is a time and a place for everything, but as Baldwin says in this essay, language is the most vivid and crucial key to identity. It reveals a private identity and connects one with or divorces one from the larger public or communal identity. And I think for me specifically, the idea of kind of this connection versus disconnection that you can kind of foster through your language, I think that is something that is kind of important to me, and it's very much like a cornerstone of my work and how I think about my work, and also just how I think about how I show up in the world and how I communicate. Because ultimately, I think to reject Black English as a Black person is to reject yourself, is to reject your culture, to reject this very long and storied history that we have as Black people. I think to kind of try to distance yourself from the language that was born from all of that, I think is, it's not the way to go. I think it's not, it's very much not a worthwhile endeavor. Because I mean, of course, there is an argument to be made about how your language may align you with certain people, certain identities, may put you in certain positions. And I think these are all, worthwhile things to consider and to think about, whether you're talking about socially, politically, professionally, all those things. I think it is something that I think we all kind of contend with throughout our lives. I think ultimately what I land on is you should do what feels authentic to you, what feels real to you, not what feels correct, because who's to say it's correct? And that is something that Baldwin also discusses, is that, like, who's to say that the white man has all the answers? Who's to say, like, what the institution of power, who's to say that what they prescribe as correct is, reality? Who's to say that speaks to your reality? Who's to say that speaks to your community? Who's to say that speaks to your experience in this life? And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to, is that, like, the language that you speak, it communicates who you are, who you want to be, who you come from. So I think that's as legitimate as any language will ever be.